Hey, you have Patrick Findaro here, co-founder at Vetted Biz. Very excited to have on Alex Oswiecinski. He's the founder of Prospect Direct. He's worked in franchising for many years, and we'll get all into his experience. And he's really on the cusp of franchisee lead generation, particularly for franchisors in the United States, as well as those that are looking to expand internationally. He's really had a nice niche in an industry that hasn't changed. And you have franchise lead portals that have been around 20 years, and there's traditional lead strategies that haven't really changed much for 20 years. And Alex is innovating a lot at Prospect Direct together with his colleagues. So we're going to talk also about some of that innovation. Alex, thanks for joining today.
Thanks, Patrick. Appreciate you having me, and look forward to a good chat about where franchising's at, lead generation, all that. So
cool. And how did you get into the franchising space?
Well, let's see. Back in 2006, I moved from Cleveland. Actually, my background here is a bunch of Cleveland Browns stuff. I still am attached to the sports teams, but moved to Dallas. I worked for TGI Fridays. So I wasn't on like sales or development side. I was on the operation supply chain side, and really got into a big system. At the time they had like 700 units. It was TGI Fridays before they kind of shrank, and learned about a system that was part corporate, part franchise, and kind of what that difference was. Had a 6-year run there, then went to Which Wich, the sandwich concept. Had another 6-year run there where I went into business development, and that kind of led to where it developed the lead generation mechanism that we use now for my company. Because it was out of necessity to find franchisees overseas that were kind of financially equipped and business savvy enough to develop big markets. And I didn't really have the Rolodex at the time to find these people. So I came up with a method to find them. So, yep.
And did you have other resources? Like, did you look for consultants or companies that maybe specialize in international franchise development while you were at Which Wich?
Oh yeah, I turned over all the rocks, and some of them worked. Like we had a broker that found us a franchisee in Panama that knew Latin America markets. We had a couple trade missions that we went on with the U.S. Commercial Services. Okay. So yeah, at the time, U.S. Commercial Services was probably the best international mechanism out there. It was just there wasn't enough events, so they'd go to a country and it'd be like super robust, but there'd only be like 4 or 5 countries a year, and maybe you'd hit a market or two that could. But then if you had 10 other target markets, there wouldn't be any activity using that avenue. So yeah.
Interesting. And what type of franchisors are you currently working with at Prospect Direct? Is it more emerging brands, or are these established brands with thousands of locations?
Yeah, good question. Domestically, I would say emerging, like in the 20 to 200 unit range is primarily where we're at. Usually it's either regional or a smattering nationally, where we get them into markets where they don't have high brand awareness. And internationally, we work with bigger brands that have a few that have over 1,000 units, because they are looking for master franchisees. And most of the time they're pretty saturated in the US, and they're getting a lot of organic lead flow just from having such high awareness in those markets already.
And so one of those, maybe focusing on those emerging franchisors, I've interviewed a lot of presidents of brands. I know that there are different franchisors that subscribe to our podcast, watch our YouTube video, that are just scaling up, whether it's 10, 20, 30 locations. What are their options for lead generation? Because you were there before on the franchisor level, and now this is what you've been developing full time, and you're really on the leading edge of lead generation. So it'd be good to know kind of what the space is and what options a franchisor has for getting leads in the United States for opening up US locations of their franchise.
Yeah. I mean, that's been the kind of like the thing I've been fascinated with for, I don't know, 5-6 years now. And really, when I was starting to my journey in franchise development, brands were switching over their franchise websites to a more advanced website that had better SEO. So I think a lot of brands had a pretty good run with that, getting their brands ranked higher in Google and getting more organic lead flow. I think that's almost table stakes now. Like, you have to have a really robust, good website with testimonials, proof, great graphics, all that stuff used to be like, you could differentiate with it. You can't really differentiate anymore. You just have to have it. So a great website will produce some organic leads, but usually not enough for the thirst of a lot of brands that are looking to grow, double digits and more. So third-party leads, portals are typically doing a bulk of lead generation still, as far as high volume, and they're typically, I'm looking for a franchise, I want to be my own boss, and then they have categories, and then those, based on what the profile of the people and what they want, they become a lead, and either they get sent to a number of brands, or they get kind of a category and they get sent to a certain category of brands. So the portals have been.
But you're fighting, I imagine, for the lead coming through a portal, it's generally, there's another 10 sandwich brands, another 10 food brands that are all kind of fighting for that one guy.
Yeah. It depends on the setup of the portal, but a lot of times they will be, a plethora of options. Like on the main portals, most brands have just listed up there. So you are fighting both for attention within that sector. And if somebody comes in, it depends how the lead generation company is doing it, but sometimes they'll give exclusivity for a short period of time only, or something like that. So it's kind of like a race to the prospect. Yeah.
And then how have you differentiated with your business model? Because it's very different than what you said, where it's the brand themselves creating a really good landing page, great thank you page, and maybe they get 50 leads in, but they need to have thousands of leads in if they're looking to really grow their system. And then you have the franchise portal. Where does Prospect Direct fit in?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, originally we had like what we called a 3-pronged approach, which was using Facebook, LinkedIn, and email.
Okay.
And there's a competitor that really was strong in Facebook, and a couple that were doing LinkedIn. And the issue is Facebook, it's no secret that really, like, the lead gen aspect of it has really fallen off.
It's pricey, right? I remember doing ads 5 years ago. It wasn't that bad, but now it's super expensive.
The big brands weren't in it yet. So the big brands have sucked up all that real estate. And just, it's like any other advertising. It's like there's X amount of real estate, and it's essentially like an auction going on in the background for price of that real estate. And in addition, I think just the behavior of people on Facebook has also changed. Like, people aren't just getting sucked into a funnel and clicking and filling out the form anymore. They're scrolling and they're looking for like a few friends on news feeds, and basically the activity on there is lessened. So we decided strategically to go away from Facebook completely, even though we knew how to do it and everything. It just wasn't efficient. LinkedIn we still were doing for a while, and then they changed their rules. Went from where you could do 1,000 invites to new people per week to 100 a week. So they 10x down to reduce kind of spam on there. And that killed a lot of LinkedIn players. So luckily, we'd already began focusing on email a while ago, realizing that, when you have people's email addresses and everything, you can really kind of control the narrative. You're not on somebody else's platform where they can just change the rules like that.
You own the prospect's relationship or client relationship at the end of the day.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And sure, Outlook and Google can change rules and send things to different folders, but it's a lot more. I look back at like the history of, direct mail, the old stamp and postman. They were around and they still are around, and it's 60, 70 years later. Well, email is the equivalent of that electronically. It's like a semi-government public-private mixture. So we decided strategically about 2 years ago to focus on email heavily, and just building our email database and kind of the attributes of those audiences and matching them with the brands and everything. So
How about texting? Do you do much texting, or do you find it kind of intrusive? Any thoughts on texting?
Yeah. We've investigated it, and we found that it sits. It's like LinkedIn and Facebook are true like advertising, right? Texting is like very highly personal. It's like after you've built a relationship a little bit, you can text. Email, you can introduce a new idea to somebody and not be too pushy. It's kind of like in a queue in their inbox. So I think it's great for follow-up.
Okay, that's well said.
After you have somebody in the top of the funnel that has shown a little bit of interest, cool. Like you can do that. I don't think it's good for generating initial interest. Yeah.
And then just for franchisors that are starting out, like how should they think about like how many leads they need a month and like conversion rate on different opportunities? Like I imagine if they get 100 leads through their website, maybe one of those might convert into a franchisee too. But if they're getting 100 leads from a franchise portal, maybe not even one, and they're going to have like 400 leads just to get one guy in. Can you shed any light in terms of like the top of the funnel to actually converting and kind of what you've seen works best, and any general statistics there?
Yeah. No, this is really where the rubber meets the road, is like conversion statistics.
Yeah.
And our team was just debating too, because we've luckily been able to like, we had our lead flow kind of go down at the end of last year, and now we've been able to really hook up again. And like how many leads can some of these brands and franchise consultants handle? And it's like one a day is actually like the sweet spot for a lot of single, after they start building a pipeline, being able to follow up and manage discovery days and everything. So like 1 to 2 leads a day seems to be like
1 to 2 quality leads that have like buyer intent, where they have the money, they're interested in opening up a business.
Yeah, from a third party in addition to their organic lead flow. Okay. So maybe they're handling like 3 to 4 a day. It doesn't seem like much, but after you have to do the follow-up and the call and you're nurturing them through the cycle, the bulk of the work.
Yeah, you have other people in the pipeline. It's not like you're just dealing with that new guy that entered in and these 2 people that entered in.
Yeah, so if you don't have no lead gen going and you're day 1, you could probably handle 10 leads a day. But by month 3 or 4, you can't put in more than 1 to 2 a day more and still work the other people properly that are in the cycle. So as far as conversions though, and you're asking, I don't have the latest on portals and everything, but one in every like 150 to 250 something range is, I've heard that floating around. Don't quote me on it. Yeah. Like there's definitely some publications that put those numbers out there and everything. It's a range based on the brands, but we're definitely in the like 1 in 55 to 70 range is where we see, because we sell 30 lead cycles, and we say, but if you sign up for 60 leads, and we hope that within that you'll get a deal.
That's solid. I mean, that's got to be better than probably most 90% of franchisors in terms of their internal traffic that they're getting.
Well, internal traffic, is, if somebody's coming to your website specifically and signing up, it's a pretty good lead. I don't know if it beats our rate. It depends on, the sign up page of the brand. Because if they have like, 28 fields to fill out, if somebody's going through and filling all that out and everything, they're probably fairly serious. If you're like, I just need your name and your email and somebody will contact you, then you're probably getting like 1 in 200, Yes. So
I imagine it also depends on the industry. Like if it's a service-based franchise that all in with item 7, it's like a $150K investment compared to opening up a Burger King, and you have some customer of a Burger King that loves Burger King, but he doesn't have millions of dollars to invest. Like, probably going to convert at a much lower rate.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that is kind of what the premise of what we brought was, that because we can proactively go out to the right audiences, we can go out to people that are less likely to be kind of like the broke dreamer type, where people have already some professional and business experience that has been proven and based on their title and their seniority level, and therefore eliminate the people that are just kind of like wanting to learn about the premise of franchising, but are at like an hourly job that they just started out of college or something. So,
well, it's what will convert better and which ones will be great franchisees. If they have a prior track record of success and they have been successful in their career the last 15 years, it probably doesn't really matter exactly what they're going to do next. They're going to have a higher rate of success than someone that has been kind of just shifting between jobs, has really never hit their stride. And franchising is not necessarily the magic solution for that candidate, even though they might be very interested in it. The franchisor might just get their franchise fee and then the guy closes after a year or two.
exactly. No, you're right. Yep.
And how do you go about like getting that ideal candidate based on based on their prior success? Anything you could share that would be helpful. I don't want to dive too much into the secret sauce, but it's quite interesting. No, guys.
Initially, I'd say like first we based it purely on title and like certain industries and things like that, but we've been able to kind of get more intelligent over time based on real results of both who becomes leads and who actually we hear feedback from our customers as to who's converting, what kind of deals they've gotten. So we're able to target, certain people of certain industries more and people of certain titles more. And we've also been able to match different seniority levels and titles with the investment levels of the brands, whereas before it was just kind of one big pool. So that's allowed us to have a different level of lead price as well. So we have like what we call 6-figure leads for higher investment brands, and then working professional leads for brands that are like under like 200,000, like service brands. So these correlations, we still are going to like, a fairly wide array of professionals, but we keep getting a little bit better over time as we get that intelligence back. So.
And who's the ideal point of contact in the franchise organization to really nurture this lead? Is it the founder themselves that's following up? Do you work with franchise sales organizations where they're getting the lead and on behalf of their client, the franchisor, they're nurturing them through the sales cycle?
Yeah. We work with everything from, a manager of franchise development to a VP of franchise development. A couple founders work leads. Sometimes it makes me a little nervous when it's like the founders working the leads. It's like, okay, well, it's almost good to have a little level of separation so that when the candidate makes it, they can meet the founder after that initial thing. But and then there's some
founder
FSOs.
Maybe should be working more on the ops side, like
or just like the whole mechanism, right? The big gluing the big picture together. And then there's like franchise outsourced sales organizations that are doing the initial nurturing, then handing off to the brand after some qualification. It's kind of divided almost into like thirds of those kind of things.
Are there any clients that you've seen like the structure worked really well for them to really scale up? Like, was it more internally that they were staffing with a franchise development manager, franchise director, or was it some combination with like working with franchise brokers or even having like a outsourced franchise sales organization?
Yeah. Patterns of success with that. Well, I've seen more brands using brokers at the smaller level and pretty effectively. I mean, we produce leads for a lot of franchise consultants or brokers, and it seems to be like more brands earlier are completely using that as their arm until they get to a certain stage. But a lot of it is just the quality of the franchise salesperson. Like, do they really care about the candidate? Like, do they really, like, what is your life story? They're not trying to just like go into the pitch of the brand. Like, they're happy to say no, or this isn't the right time, just as happy as they are to say, yes, come on and learn more. Like, they're really like an educator and a person who cares rather than somebody who's trying to just like hit numbers. And those are people we've seen like sustain, and they're like on cycle, 30 with us, rather than the ones that like come in and are like, the leads aren't working. And it's like,
Dude,
similar
you're not
leads are
asking
working for
questions. You don't
similar
know.
brands. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah.
And I'm sure it doesn't, you're probably pretty exclusive where you don't want to have someone do a second cycle if they're not closing at a decent rate, because then it's just
Oh,
going to
yeah.
be frustration for everyone. And it's just like, hey, you're not, and you probably have to be a little careful on how much feedback you give and before like stepping on their toes. But if they're only closing 1 in 120 or 1 in 150, it's probably frustrating for you too, because you're creating all these nice quality leads that are kind of getting wasted at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, Connie on my team interfaces with the customer. She did franchise sales herself for like 15 years before coming aboard. And she really can, she can feel that when she's on initial calls pretty well. Like, is this person like going to do this the right way? And then that's why we only do like a 2 lead cycle commitment at the beginning. It's not because, we love retaining great customers, but we also want to be able to break up with them if things are just like not a good fit. Because at the end of the day, we are increasing our pool of lead, but there's a finite number of overall leads that can be produced in the US, and we want to have them with the right brands. So, yeah.
How have you seen the franchise industry evolving, like in the last 15 years that you've been a part of it? In terms of like how people go about finding franchises and just how people and the franchisor sells franchises?
Yeah, I think like in most industries with the internet, man, it's just like the consumer or the prospective investor is just more educated. So, and easier, it's so much easier to get information. So they're coming in with that 70, 80% knowledge, rather than like 10 years ago, it was like they knew a little bit of thing, like, but they'd go to a trade show and they'd be like, wow.
Yeah.
And you could like just wow them with like cool logos and giveaways and stuff. It's like, no, they're like, even somebody who like, made their first $100,000 in life is like as savvy as a millionaire was 10 years ago, and
that's well said. Where the millionaire had the best advisors, the accountant, the attorney that could filter out, provide information, but now a lot of that's available online.
Right. Yeah. So you got to just assume that they know more, and they're weighing your option against others. So you have to elevate the conversation a little bit and listen to what they really want. It's like it's a listening game more. And that, yeah, it's a softer sell, if you will. I think it's just, that's evolved. I think maybe the ability to create a brand has gotten easier, like just to put the pieces together, and the FDD and the attorney and all that. You can just put those puzzle pieces together. The playbook has been written so many times. So it's really about having like the founder having a passion and their heart in it, and then being able to create an organization of people that share that. And it isn't just about like a logo and like, we're going to pound, this is a hot niche and we're going to go in there. It's more like, it's got to be just more real and authentic. And that has to come through both online and to the candidates that come in, and then the team members, it has to all be kind of like congruent. So
have you seen much of a difference between franchise systems that are private equity owned and operated versus ones that the founder is still very much a presence in the business?
Let me think. I don't know. I guess with private, when the bigger private equity companies are rolling up a lot, I guess they're more likely to try to generate their leads internally and have like that be a common. Yeah, I would say maybe the founder-led companies are looking for third-party help more. They're outsourcing more of those activities and trying to just, be the heart of the brand.
Interesting.
The founders, the founders are more involved in a non-private equity. I think they'll like when we have creative, and then the copy goes to the brand for approval and everything. You'll hear the founder chimes in on some stuff more. And private equity just kind of goes through a system, and yeah, it's legal gets more involved, I guess, with the private equity stuff. But other than that, I mean, I don't see any like serious, like huge differences, but yeah.
Sure. Well said. And when's the right time to go or start thinking about international? Like I know some franchise systems, they have 30 locations and they have one in Dubai. And you have other brands at 500 locations US, and they're maybe going to open one in Canada. Like when
Yeah.
should a brand start thinking about that international expansion?
Yeah, and it's another like $1 million question for a lot of founders. A lot of it is, I would say, resisting the urge to haphazardly, kind of like, because you're going to get some inquiries from different countries, people that are visiting the US and whatever. And I see a lot of brands jumping on that, and you should have a more organized approach for sure.
Yeah.
So I think you need to have like all your departments built out to some level. Like when I was at Witch, I was essentially the first to second international employee. The founder's brother was doing it, and I had a lot of experience from TGI Fridays coming in, so we were able to like kind of bootstrap it together, and then we ended up going to like 11 countries.
Wow.
And we were at that time they were at 120 units. By the time I left, they were at about 400. So that was we had a good run for sure. And I would say if they had tried to do it at like 50 units, it would have caused too much chaos.
Okay.
Because they were still kind of like organizing systems and processes internally too much domestically. Because internationally, you're trying to copy the model and then introduce all the new variables of a new market, a new supply chain, how to translate if there's any language issues. You introduce 5-6 new variables.
Consumer tastes are different.
Preferences. If it's like food, do you tweak this on the menu? Introduce that, and it'll just distract the founder or the top executives. It'll be a distraction more than a like revenue new channel that you want it to be, like a growth engine. So it still remains that the countries that are kind of more close by are probably easiest, just because of the travel's easy.
Yeah.
You can like hop down there and just get on the ground if you need to, like Canada, Mexico.
Yeah, I mean, Panama is easier for us to get from Miami than like basically the same flight distance to New York City. So, and
right, yeah,
pretty similar in Texas.
Yep, yeah. So that I've seen it go like both ways on international, but I would say definitely above 100, 200 units would be like recommended.
And have you seen it best where that international franchisee is developing? They're like a master franchisee, and that's it. They're the point of contact. They're the ones owning and operating these locations, or that there's like another level down where they're collecting part of the royalty and they're doing a lot of training for kind of sub franchisees in the market. Have you seen both models? Have one of them worked better?
Yeah, and we debated it too, whether we would allow sub franchising or not. Because I mean, Subway, by unit volume exploded internationally and everywhere with like a pure sub franchising model. They'd have a master who would own almost no units and just purely be a sales engine to sell franchises, and it worked for them to some degree. I mean, I don't know, some markets aren't as sustainable, but it depends on, I guess, the simplicity of the model, really. Like TGI Fridays, I would never allow sub-franchising. It's just way too complex it's like the game of telephone. You're translating it to the master has to translate it to a sub. And by the time it gets down here, the brand is gonna be all over the place. If you're making widgets and it's like simple and it's like, we're making a carrot that's this long and this, yeah, you can then
minimal employees. You don't have 20, 30 plus employees per unit.
Yeah, so I'd say business model complexity would control.
Well
yeah.
Any concluding thoughts in terms of franchisors that are looking to get started? Maybe they're at that 10, 20 unit mark and they're kind of testing the waters. They're not sure if they're going to go the franchise broker route or if they're going to hire a franchise sales organization. Any suggestion for those franchisors that are really just looking to grow their business from relatively low numbers?
Yeah. I guess it's like a weighted scale of two things. It's like, on one hand, you can't grow unless you get some leads and prospects in the pipeline, however you get them, right?
Yes.
You got to have a pipeline, and the more options you have, the more picky you can be. So you need to like if you want to grow, you got to have a pipeline. You can't just expect it to come out of thin air, especially in like a super noisy digital world. On the other hand, you do have to be careful with your growth, and you can't be like, this person's, I'm getting like bad feelings about it, but this is the plan we put in place. And we got to hit our numbers. If you start compromising on your values, franchising is like an amplifier for a brand. It can amplify it in a good way or a bad way. And once a downward spiral starts happening, it's very hard to reverse and herd cats that are going off the program and don't believe. So you got to build a pipeline to have enough options, but then you got, on the other hand, you got to be picky with those options. So it's never too early to get some options in the pipeline. You do have to probably spend a little money one way or another, whether it's internally or externally, to get the right candidates and get the word out. But that's kind of my general advice. Yeah.
Well said, Alex. I'm going to make sure that your contact information and a link to your websites in the show notes, as well as the YouTube description. I don't know if you have any other closing thoughts, but it was great to have you on.
Yeah, man. I don't do many of these, maybe like one or two a year, but I appreciate really talking to you, and it was great questions, and just kind of allows me to kind of think about the overall picture too, and kind of check in. And yeah, I appreciate your time.
No, for sure. It's definitely, it could be a useful tool for franchise brokers, franchise consultants, franchisors, franchise sales organizations. So, and you guys are on the forefront. So
both on the same team of trying to, increase the franchising pie in a high quality way and give entrepreneurs an option to grow. And, hopefully this, little education can help do it the right way. So
definitely. Well said, Alex. Thanks a lot.
All right, Patrick. Thanks, man.